Welcome to Life Stories Network. Today's story is about family, betrayal, and the kind of pain that cuts deeper than anything else. It's about how the people you trust most can walk away when you're at your lowest and then come crawling back when they need you. This is my story, and I want you to hear it straight from me. I was always the quiet one in my family. My parents had 2 kids, me and my younger brother. My brother Daniel was the golden child. He could do no wrong in their eyes. Every award he won was celebrated like he cured cancer. Every mistake I made was treated like the end of the world. Still, I tried to hold on to hope. I wanted to believe that even if they didn't always show it, they loved me the same. Life tested me harder than I ever thought possible. A few years ago, I hit the darkest season of my life. I lost my job after the company I worked for shut down. I had bills piling up, and to make it worse, I was struggling with health problems that drained me physically and emotionally. I wasn't asking for luxury or miracles. I just needed a little help to keep myself afloat, to breathe without feeling like I was drowning every single day. So I did what most children think they can do. I turned to my parents. I went to their house one evening, broken, tired, and scared, and told them the truth. I told them I couldn't manage rent. I told them I needed support. I told them I felt like I was collapsing inside. Do you know what they said? They looked at me with eyes colder than strangers and told me, "You need to grow up. We're not going to bail you out." Those words hit me harder than anything else in my life. It wasn't just about the money. It was about knowing that in the hardest moment, my parents, my own parents, saw me as a burden, not as their child. I walked out that night feeling like I had been cut open. Every step home felt heavier, like I was dragging chains behind me. I cried more than I want to admit. I kept asking myself, what did I do to deserve this? Why am I never enough for them? But life doesn't pause for heartbreak. I had to keep moving. I found small jobs, side hustles, anything that would put food on the table and keep the lights on. It was humiliating sometimes, but it made me stronger in ways I didn't see at the time. Meanwhile, Daniel was living his best life. My parents supported him through everything. They bought him a car. They helped him pay his rent. They bragged about him at family gatherings. Even when he got into trouble, they brushed it off like it was nothing. I tried not to be bitter, but how could I not notice? How could I not feel the sting of favoritism when it was right in front of me? 2 years later, something happened that changed everything. I had finally started to get my life together. I found a stable job, started saving, and rebuilt myself from the ground up. I wasn't rich, but I was standing on my own feet. That's when I got a phone call in the middle of the night from my parents. Their voices were panicked. Their golden boy Daniel had been caught stealing, not just a small amount. He had embezzled $2.5 million from his company. The news was everywhere. The perfect son, the golden child, was suddenly a criminal. And here's where the real twist comes in. Do you know what my parents did? After years of cutting me off, after refusing to help me when I was drowning, they came running to me. They begged me to use my savings, my stability, my connections to help their son. They cried and pleaded, saying, "Please, you have to help your brother. You're the only one who can save this family." The irony almost made me laugh. Where were these tears when I was breaking down? Where was this desperation when I begged them to see me, to hear me, to love me? Suddenly, I wasn't a burden anymore. Suddenly, I was their only hope. And standing there, listening to their pleas, I realized something powerful. I didn't owe them anything. I didn't owe Daniel anything. The child they had cast aside was no longer desperate for their approval. I had found my worth outside of them. But that moment wasn't just about revenge or anger. It was about clarity. For the first time, I saw my family for what they truly were. They didn't value me until I became useful. Their love was conditional, and it had always been that way. The difference now was that I had learned to love myself without needing theirs. I looked my parents in the eyes and told them no. It was the hardest word I've ever said to them, but it was the most freeing. I told them, "You didn't believe in me when I needed you. Don't expect me to save you now." Their faces fell, and for once, the power dynamic shifted. I wasn't the weak one anymore. I wasn't the desperate one begging for crumbs of affection. I was strong, and they couldn't control me anymore. That was the night I closed a chapter of my life. I didn't do it with anger or screaming. I did it with peace. Because finally I understood, sometimes family isn't about blood. Sometimes family is about who stands with you in your darkest hours. And if your own blood abandons you, you are allowed to walk away. After I told my parents no, the silence in the room was heavy. You could almost hear their hearts breaking, but not for me, not because of the years they ignored my pain. Their hearts broke for Daniel, their golden boy, the son who had stolen millions and shattered the family's image. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one they were ashamed of. It was strange, standing there, realizing that the roles had flipped. Suddenly, I was the one with dignity, and Daniel was the one drowning in disgrace. But don't get me wrong, saying no wasn't easy. A part of me wanted to cave in, wanted to be the bigger person and rush to their side, even after everything they had done. That's the kind of power family holds, even when they've hurt you. But I reminded myself of those nights when I sat alone in my apartment with no money for food, crying quietly because I didn't want anyone to hear how broken I was. They hadn't been there then. Why should I sacrifice my hard-earned peace for people who only called me when they were desperate? The news about Daniel spread quickly. It was everywhere, from newspapers to social media. People whispered about it at grocery stores, co-workers gossiped about it in offices, and neighbors shook their heads with pity. My parents went into hiding, embarrassed to show their faces. They had always bragged about Daniel being their pride and joy, and now they were humiliated. And in that humiliation, they came crawling back to me again and again. Calls, texts, emails begging me to reconsider. They even tried to guilt me, saying things like, "We're still your parents. We raised you. You owe us." But here's the truth I had learned the hard way. You don't owe people who abandon you in your time of need. Meanwhile, I focused on my own life. I poured my energy into my work, my health, and my small circle of friends who had become my real family. These were the people who stayed up with me when I couldn't sleep, who brought me meals when I was too tired to cook, who believed in me when I had nothing to give back. They didn't have my blood, but they had my back, and that meant more than any last name ever could. Daniel's trial dragged on for months. My parents were in constant panic mode, trying to scrape together lawyers, begging distant relatives for help, even mortgaging their house. They thought maybe I'd feel sorry for them, seeing how far they had fallen. But every time they called, every time they showed up at my door, I remembered their cold words. "You need to grow up. We're not going to bail you out." And I stood firm. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I simply protected the peace I had fought so hard to build. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel called me. At first, I didn't want to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice on the other end of the line was nothing like the confident, arrogant brother I remembered. He was broken, scared, and begging. He said, "I know you probably hate me, but please, you're the only one who can help." It was surreal, hearing the same person who had mocked me growing up, who had enjoyed being the favorite, now sounding like a desperate child. I listened quietly, and then I told him the truth. I said, "Daniel, I don't hate you." I never did. "But I can't save you. I had to save myself when no one else would, and now it's your turn." There was silence on the line. He didn't yell, he didn't argue. He just sighed, and for a moment, I think he finally understood what it felt like to be me. To be abandoned, to be overlooked, to be told no when you're desperate. That call changed something in me. I realized I didn't need revenge or to see my family suffer. What I needed was freedom from the grip they had on my self-worth. And in that moment, I let go of the years of bitterness. I didn't forgive them. Not completely, but I released the hold their choices had on my life. I refused to let their betrayal define me anymore. As Daniel's sentencing drew closer, my parents grew more frantic. They sold jewelry, drained their savings, and begged for mercy. Nothing worked. Daniel was found guilty and sentenced to years in prison. My parents were shattered. The golden child was gone, and their perfect family image had crumbled forever. For them, it was a tragedy. For me, it was a strange kind of closure. I wasn't happy to see Daniel fall, but I couldn't deny the justice in it. Life had a way of balancing things, even when people thought it never would. In the weeks after his sentencing, I barely heard from my parents. Maybe they were too ashamed, or maybe they finally realized I wasn't going to come running. But one day, I got a letter in the mail from my mom. It wasn't long, but it was raw. She admitted she had failed me, that she hadn't been the mother I deserved. She wrote, "We were blinded by our love for your brother. We thought we were helping him by always protecting him, but we only ruined him. And in doing so, we lost you. Reading those words, I felt something crack inside me. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat there quietly, letting the weight of it sink in. I haven't decided what to do with that letter. Part of me wants to tear it up and throw it away, to keep my distance and never look back. Another part of me wonders if maybe, just maybe, people can change when life humbles them enough. But here's what I know for sure. I'm not the same person I was when they cut me off. I'm stronger, wiser, and I finally see my value. Whether they ever truly change or not, I've already won. Because I didn't let their betrayal destroy me. I rebuilt myself, and no one can take that away from me. That's the lesson I want anyone listening to this to take away. Family can hurt you in ways no one else can. They can cut deep, they can abandon you, and they can make you feel worthless. But you are not worthless. You can rise without their approval. You can stand tall without their support. And when they come crawling back, you get to decide whether to open the door or keep it shut. That choice is yours and yours alone. Life after Daniel's sentencing was quiet for me, but it was chaos for my parents. They had to face the gossip, the shame, and the emptiness of knowing their golden son wasn't coming home anytime soon. For once, they couldn't fix the problem with excuses or favoritism. They had to sit with the reality they had created. I didn't see them much during that time, but the few times I did, they looked older, more fragile, as if the weight of years of denial had finally caught up with them. For me, things were different. My life wasn't perfect, but it was steady. I had learned to build joy in small things, cooking a meal for myself, laughing with friends, even just walking home from work without fear of eviction notices on my door. That stability, something so simple, felt like the biggest blessing after everything I had been through. And maybe that's the point. Sometimes the things we take for granted are the very things that show us how far we've come. Months passed before I heard from my parents again. This time they wanted to meet in person. My first instinct was to say no, but something inside me told me to go. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure. We met at a small cafe, a neutral place. They looked nervous when I walked in, like I was the parent and they were the children who had done something wrong. My mom spoke first. She said, "We don't expect you to forgive us. We just want to say we're sorry." And for the first time in my life, I believed she meant it. It wasn't a long conversation. There were no dramatic tears, no big promises. Just quiet admissions of failure. My dad, the man who had always been so harsh and judgmental, said words I never thought I'd hear. "We were wrong. We failed you." That hit me harder than all the years of rejection, because part of me had stopped waiting for them to ever acknowledge it. Part of me had made peace with never hearing those words. But here they were, sitting across from me, broken people who finally saw the damage they had done. I didn't forgive them right away. Forgiveness isn't magic, it's a process. And sometimes, it's not even for the other person. It's for yourself. What I did feel, though, was a sense of release, like I had been carrying this heavy backpack of anger for years, and suddenly someone helped me set it down. I wasn't ready to rebuild a relationship, but I was ready to let go of the resentment that had eaten at me for so long. Later that night, I thought a lot about what forgiveness really means. Does it mean forgetting? No. Does it mean excusing what they did? Absolutely not. Forgiveness, at least for me, meant freeing myself from being chained to the pain they caused. It meant I could move forward without dragging the weight of the past behind me. And that realization gave me peace in a way I never thought I'd have. As for Daniel, prison changed him. I got a letter from him a year into his sentence. He apologized, too, not just for what he had done to me, but for the way he had treated me our whole lives. He admitted he had been arrogant, spoiled, and blind to how much our parents' favoritism had hurt me. Reading his words, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, relief. But mostly I felt something I hadn't expected, compassion. Because even though he had been the golden child, he had been trapped too. Trapped by the pedestal our parents put him on, trapped by their refusal to ever let him fail and learn. And that pedestal had become his downfall. I don't know if I'll ever be close with my family again. Some wounds run too deep to fully heal. But what I do know is this. I am no longer the person who begged for scraps of love. I am no longer the child who cried behind closed doors asking why I wasn't enough. I am someone who survived abandonment, rebuilt myself from nothing, and found strength in places I never thought I'd look. And if that's not enough, I don't know what is. So, if you're listening to this and you've been hurt by your family, if you've been cut off, rejected, or made to feel invisible, let me tell you this. You are not defined by their rejection. You are not less worthy because they failed to see your value. Sometimes the hardest truth is that family can be toxic. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step away, protect your peace, and build a life without their approval. It won't be easy. It will hurt, but it will also set you free. Years later, when I look back, I don't think about the nights I cried as much as I think about the nights I survived. I don't dwell on the silence of being ignored, but on the noise of laughter with the people who chose to love me. And most importantly, I don't define myself by the family who cut me off, but by the resilience that carried me through. That resilience, that refusal to stay broken, is my real inheritance. When my parents begged me for help after Daniel's crime, they thought they were asking me to save their son. But what they really did was give me the chance to save myself. By saying no, by standing firm, I broke free from years of seeking validation that was never going to come. And that was the beginning of my freedom. This story isn't about revenge or about getting even. It's about survival, growth, and learning that your worth is never tied to someone else's opinion of you. It's about realizing that sometimes the family we're born into isn't the family we end up needing. And it's about knowing that no matter how deep the betrayal, you still have the power to rise, rebuild, and reclaim your life. So, if you've ever been where I was, if you've ever been cut off, ignored, or left to struggle alone, hear me clearly. You can make it. You can build your own family, your own peace, your own joy. And when the people who hurt you come knocking, you get to decide what role, if any, they'll play in the next chapter of your life. That choice is yours, and no one can take it away.